It's Christmas Day 1998. My sister and I are still lost in the middle of the Pokemon card craze. As we rip open our booster packs looking for that elusive Charizard, my dad is given a gift from his parents. A gift that would have more of an effect on me than Pokemon cards ever would. The gift that my dad received was Age of Empires, a game that he could play on our family's new Gateway 2000 computer. Little did he know that the game would soon become the favorite game of our whole family. Well, except my mom. She didn't really get our obsession, I don't think. The only game that would dethrone Age of Empires was Age of Empires 2. To fully understand how Age of Empires came into being, we need to jump back a few more years, to the year of 1990. Our story begins with Tony Goodman, who at the time had founded an IT consulting firm called Ensemble Corporation. Goodman learned how to code at a young age from his dad, and it instilled in him a love for computers and computer games. While attending college at the University of Texas, Tony was diagnosed with narcolepsy, which made college nearly impossible. Shortly after the diagnosis, Goodman dropped out of college to work with his dad. Tony knew that he wanted to make video games, but started with a business software company to build capital. After the release of its award-winning software Command Center, Ensemble saw an explosion of growth, going from just a handful of employees to hundreds. But this still wasn't good enough for Goodman. He still had a dream to make video games. In 1994, Microsoft released a new programming interface called WinG as a way for game developers to make games more easily for Windows computers. WinG was a direct predecessor to DirectX. Tony believed that this was a great new opportunity. According to Tony's brother Rick, while talking with the engineering team, Tony said, "Hey, would any of you rather be programming games than databases?" People in the meeting didn't think he was being serious, but as it turned out, he was. With a small group of employees, Tony began building a game engine with an isometric perspective inspired by SimCity 2000, and in 1995, Ensemble Studios was founded. Tony, his brother Rick, and their longtime friend Bruce Shelley came up with an idea for a game that they called Dawn of Man. Taking inspiration from Warcraft, Command & Conquer, and Civilization, the team spent the next year making a working prototype of the game. The game featured a historical setting, unlike other real-time strategy games at the time that had a fantasy and science fiction setting. This helped the game stand out from the crowd. The game also had a bright and sunny look about it compared to most games at the time, which Tony felt had a dark and drab look. By 1996, Dawn of Man was now called Age of Empires, and Ensemble Studios had managed to grab Microsoft to publish the game, avoiding the perils of self-publishing. At the time, Microsoft was trying to find their feet in the exploding PC gaming market, and due to their lack of experience in publishing games, they let Ensemble make all the creative decisions. Microsoft wasn't even that upset when Ensemble delayed the game by a year to make sure the game was polished and balanced. Age of Empires was introduced at E3 in 1996, and it managed to garner some good attention, showing off its epic battles, advanced AI opponents, and bright and cheerful graphics. The game promised to be a big name in the real-time strategy gaming genre. After a few more delays, Age of Empires was finally released on October 13th, 1997. It debuted to positive reviews from critics and scored highly on review aggregator sites like Metacritic and Game Rankings. At this point, it was clear that the game was going to be a great success. By the end of 1997, the game had sold nearly 800,000 copies and was the best-selling real-time strategy game during this period. Age of Empires was released in 55 different countries in just the first 4 months. The player of Age of Empires is required to grow an entire civilization from just a handful of villagers. The villagers are used to gather resources that include wood, food, gold, and stone. These resources are then used to create more villagers, build buildings, upgrade units, and advance through the stone, Tool, Bronze, and Iron Age. Players must be cognizant of how they utilize their gathered resources, as the resources do not generate. Once a tree is chopped down, it will not grow back. When starting a new game, the player can choose between playing the campaign or a random map game. When playing a random map game, the player can choose between 12 different civilizations or 17 different civilizations with the 1998 expansion, The Rise of Rome. With the random map mode, there are several game variations including Deathmatch and King of the Hill. The campaigns, on the other hand, featured scenarios built around the history of 4 historical empires. The main goal of the game is to defeat your enemy by any means necessary. The most common way to victory is completely wiping out your enemy. The player can also win a random map game by constructing a wonder and protecting it for the next 2,000 years. While the graphics were not groundbreaking, it was clear that there was a great amount of detail put into the buildings in the game. The buildings change and upgrade as the player goes through the 4 ages. The game is a bright and colorful experience, just as Tony Goodman had wanted. The in-game UI is simple to learn, which made it easy for anyone to jump in and have a good time. The AI had 5 different difficulty modes that the player could choose from when playing a game. The sound design of the game was also excellent, with a soundtrack that kept the player invested in the game. The game also had many distinctive noises that would alert the player to situations in the game. A typical random match could last anywhere from 1 to 4 hours depending on difficulty and number of opponents. I won't go too far into the gameplay of Age of Empires, as this video would likely run on for 30 minutes or more. It is truly a game that you have to play for yourself to fully understand the allure of the game. While I did not play the first installment of Age of Empires nearly as much as I did the second game, Age of Empires 2: The Age of the Kings, I can still remember spending hours of time watching my dad play Age of Empires on our home computer. This instilled in me a love for real-time strategy games that continues to this very day. My dad, sister, and myself still regularly get online to play one of the Age of Empires games, and it still feels just as fun and entertaining as it did in the 90s. As for the legend who brought us Age of Empires, Tony Goodman continued working at Ensemble Studios after Microsoft had purchased it in 2001. Goodman stayed on until Microsoft shut down Ensemble in 2009. After Ensemble Studios, Tony founded Robot Entertainment, where he worked for a short period of time before founding his next video game venture, PeopleFun. Tony worked as the CEO at PeopleFun for the next 12 years before his retirement in 2022. So what do you think of Age of Empires? Have you ever played it? Let me know in the comments. And as always, my name is Gage, and thank you very much for watching.